Jnanakosha, Puranas, Introduction.
सर्गच्च प्रतिसर्गच्च वंशो मन्वन्तराणि च वंशानुचरितं चैव पुराणं पञ्चलक्षणम्। सर्गच्च प्रतिसर्गच्च वंशो मन्वन्तराणि च वंशानुचरितं चैव पुराणं पञ्चलक्षणम्।
The Brahma Purana is one of the major 18 Mahapuranas, a genus of Hindu religious texts. The extant text comprises 246 chapters and 10,000 verses. It is divided into two parts, the Purva Bhaga and the Uttara Bhaga. The first part narrates the story behind the creation of the cosmos, details the life and deeds of Rama and Krishna. Chapters 70 to 175 deal with Gautami Mahatyam, glorifying of the Godavari river. The second part contains the details about the Purushottama Tirtha, which is one of the holy places. The Padma Purana categorizes Brahma Purana as a Rajas Purana, Purana which represents dimness and passion. It is the first of the 18 Puranas in all the lists except that of the Padma Purana. Brahma Purana. There was a forest known as Naimisaranya. The sages, Maharishis, arranged for a sacrifice in this forest and the ceremony went on for 12 years. Naimisaranya forest was a wonderful place to arrange sacrifices in. The climate was pleasant. There were trees full of climate was pleasant. There were trees full of flowers and fruit. There was no shortage of food in the forest, and animals, birds and sages lived there happily. Many sages came to attend the sacrifice that had been arranged in Naimisaranya. With them was Lomaharshana. Lomaharshana also it is pronounced, Vedavyasa's disciple. Vedavyasa has instructed this disciple of his in the knowledge of the Purana. The assembled sages worshipped the learned Lomaharshana and said, "Please tell us the stories of the Puranas. Who created the universe? Who is its preserver? And who will destroy it? Please instruct us in all these mysteries." Lomaharshana replied, "Many years ago, Daksha and the other sages had asked Brahma these very questions. I have learnt about Brahma's replies from my Guru, teacher, Vedavyasa. I will relate to you what I know. In the beginning there was water everywhere, and the Brahma slept on this water in the form of Vishnu. Since water is called Nara, and since Ayana means a bed, Vishnu is known as Narayana. In the water there emerged a golden egg. Brahma was born inside this egg. Since he created himself, he is called Swayambhu, born who by himself. For one whole year, Brahma lived inside the egg. He then split the egg into two and created heaven and the earth from the two parts of the egg. Skies, directions, time, language and senses were created in both heaven and earth. From the powers of this mind, Brahma gave birth to 7 great sages. Their names were Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulasya, Pulaha, Kratu and Vasishta. Brahma also created the god Rudra and the sage Sanat Kumara. On creation, to continue with the process of creation, Brahma gave birth to a man and a woman from his own body. The man was named Swayambhuva Manu and the woman was named Shatarupa. Humans are descended from Manu. That is the reason they are known as Manava. Manu and Shatarupa had three sons named Vira, Priyavrata, and Uttamapada. Uttamapada's son was the great Dhruva. Dhruva performed very difficult meditation, tapasya, for 3000 divine years. Brahma was so pleased at this that he granted Dhruva an eternal place in the sky near the constellation that is known as Saptarishi or the seven sages. This is the constellation Ursa Majoris, and Dhruva is the pole star. In Dhruva's line there was a king named Prachinavarahi. Prachinavarahi had 10 sons known as the Prachetas. These Prachetas were supposed to look after the world and rule over it, but they were not interested in such mundane matters. They went off instead to perform tapasya under the ocean. The tapasya went on for 10,000 years. The upshot was that the earth had no ruler and began to suffer. People started to die, and thick forests sprouted everywhere. So thick were the forests that even the winds could not blow. News of this catastrophe reached to Prachetas. They were furious with the trees and created wind, Vayu, and fire, Agni, from their mouths. The wind dried up the trees and the fire burnt them, so that very soon there were very few trees left on earth. Everyone was alarmed at the effects of the Prachetas' anger. The moon god Soma or Chandra came to the Prachetas with a beautiful woman and said, Prachetas, please control your anger. You need someone to rule over the world so that you can concentrate on your tapasya. This woman is named Marisha. Her son will rule over the world. The Prachetas agreed to this proposal, and Daksha was born. The word Praja means subject, and the word Pati means master. Since Daksha ruled over the world and its subjects, Daksha came to be known as Prajapati. The sages interrupted Romaharshana. They said, Sage, we are completely confused. We have heard that Daksha was born from Brahma's toe, and yet you have told us that Daksha was the son of the Prachetas. How is this possible? Romaharshana replied, There is no reason for bewilderment. Many Dakshas have been born to rule over the world. One was born from Brahma's toe, yet another was the son of the Prachetas. Daksha's offspring. Daksha's wife was named Asikli, and Asikli gave birth to 5,000 sons. They were known as the Harshavas. The Harshavas were destined to rule over the world, but the sage Narada went to the Harshavas and said, How can you rule over the world if you don't even know what the world looks like? Are you familiar with its geography and its limits? First find out about these things before you contemplate ruling over the world. The Haryashavas went off to explore the world and never returned. Daksha and Asiliki then had another 1,000 sons who were named the Shavalashvas. Narada told them that he had told the Harshavas, and the Shavalas also went off to explore the world and never returned. Daksha and Asiliki were distressed that their children should disappear in this manner. Daksha blamed Narada for the instigation and proposed to kill him, but Brahma intervened and persuaded Daksha to control his anger. This Daksha agreed to do, provided that his conditions were met. Brahma must marry my daughter Priya, he said, and Narada must be born as Priya's son. These conditions were accepted. In fact, Daksha and Asiliki had 60 daughters. Elsewhere, the Brahma Purana mentions 50 daughters. 10 of these daughters were married to the god Dharma and 13 to the sage Kashyapa. 27 daughters were married to Soma or Chandra. The remaining daughters were married to the sages Aristonemi, Vahuputra, Angirasa, and Krishashva. The 10 daughters who were married to the god Dharma were named Arundhati, Vasu, Yami, Lamba, Bhanu, Martavati, Sankalpa, Maharuta, Sandhya, and Vishwa. Arundhati's children were the objects, Vishya of the world. Vasu's children were the 8 gods known as the Vasus. Their names are Apa, Dhruva, Soma, Dhara, Salila, Anala, Pratyusha, and Prabhasa. Anala's son was Kumara. Because Kumara was brought up by goddesses known as the Kritikas, he came to be called Kartikeya. Prabhasa's son was Vishwakarma. Vishwakarma was skilled in architecture and the making of jewelry. He became the architect of the gods. Sandhya's children were the gods known as Sandhyadevas, and Vishwa's children were the gods known as Vishwadevas. The 27 daughters of Daksha who were married to Soma are known as the Nakshatra stars. As you have already been told, Kashyapa married 30 of Daksha's daughters. Their names were Aditi, Diti, Danu, Arishta, Surasa, Khasa, Surabhi, Vinita, Tamara, Krodhavamsa, Illa, Kadru, and Muni. Aditi's sons were the 12 gods known as the Adityas. Their names were Vishnu, Shakra, Aryama, Dhata, Vidhata, Tvashta, Pusha, Vishwavana, Savita, Mitravaruna, Amsha, and Bhaga. Diti's sons were the Daityas. They were named Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and amongst their descendants were their other powerful Daityas like Bali and Banarasura. Diti also had a daughter named Simhika, who was married to a Danava demon named Viprachiti. Their offsprings were terrible demons like Vatapi, Namuchi, Ilavala, Maricha, and the Nivatakavachas. The 100 sons of Danu came to be known as Danavas. The Danavas were thus cousins to the Daityas and also to the Adityas. In the Danava line were born demons like the Palomas and Kakleyas. Arishta's sons were the Gandharvas, singers of heaven. Surasa gave birth to the snake Sarpa. Khasa's children were the Yakshas, demigods who were the companions of Kubera, the god of wealth, and the Rakshasas, demons. Surabhi's descendants were cows and buffaloes. Vinita had 2 sons named Aruna and Garuda. Garuda became the king of the birds. Tamra has 6 daughters. From these daughters were born owls, eagles, vultures, crows, waterfowl, horses, camels, and donkeys. Krodhavarsha had 14,000 children known as Nagas. Ila gave birth to trees, creepers, shrubs, and bushes. Kadru's sons were also known as Nagas or snakes. Among the more important of Kadru's sons were Ananta, Vasuki, Taksha, and Nahusha. Muni gave birth to the Apsaras, dancers of heaven. Diti's children, Daityas, and Aditi's children, Adityas, continually fought among themselves. On one particular occasion, the gods succeeded in killing many of the demons. Thirsting for revenge, Diti began to pray to her husband, Kashyapa, that she might give birth to a son who would kill Indra the king of the gods. Kashyapa found it difficult to refuse his wife outright. All right, he said, you have to bear the sun in your room for 100 years, and throughout this period you will have indeed killed Indra. But if you do not observe these instructions to the letter, your desire will not be satisfied. Diti resolved to do as her husband had bidden her, but Indra had got to know about Diti's resolve and was waiting for an opportunity to save himself. There was an occasion when, tired after her prayers, Diti went to sleep without first washing her feet. This was an unclean act and it gave Indra the required opportunity. He adopted a minuscule form and entered Diti's womb. With his weapon Vajra, he sliced up the baby inside the womb into 7 parts. The baby naturally began to cry at the pain. Indra kept on saying, Ma Ruda, that is, don't cry. But the baby, or rather its 7 parts, would not listen. Indra thereupon sliced up each of the 7 parts into 7 more sections, so that there were 49 sections in all. When these 49 sections were born, they came to known as the Maruts, from the words that Indra had addressed them. Since Diti had not been able to adhere to the condition her husband had set, the Maruts did not kill Indra. They instead became Indra's followers or companions and were treated as gods. Prithu. In Dhruva's line there was a king named Anga. Anga was religious and followed the virtuous paths, but unfortunately Anga's son Vena inherited none of the good qualities of his father. Vena's mother was Sunita, and she happened to be the daughter of Mrityu. Mrityu was notorious for his evil ways and deeds. Vena spent a lot of time with his maternal grandfather and picked up these evil characteristics. Vena gave up the religion that was laid down in the Vedas and stopped all yajnas. He instructed his subjects that he alone was to be worshipped. The sages, led by Marichi, came to Vena to try and persuade him to mend his ways. But Vena was in no mood to listen. He insisted that there was no one equal to him in the whole universe. The sages realized that Vena was a lost cause. They physically caught hold of Vena and began to knead his right thigh. From this kneading emerged a horrible looking creature. It was a dwarf and its complexion was extremely dark. The sage Atri was so aghast at the dwarf's appearance that he blurted out Nishida, which means sit. From this the dwarf came to be known as Nishada. The race of Nishadas became hunters and fishermen and lived in the Vindhya mountains. From them were also descended uncivilized races like Tusharas and Tunduras. The evil that was in Vena's body and mind came out with the emergence of the Nishida. When the sages began to knead Vena's right arm, Prithu emerged. He shone like a flaming fire and his energy lit up the 4 directions. He held a bow in his hand and he was clad in beautiful armor. As soon as Prithu was born, Vena died. All the rivers and the oceans arrived with their waters and their jewels to anoint Prithu as the king. The gods and the sages also came for the coronation. Brahma himself crowned Prithu, the king of the earth. He also took the opportunity to apportion out the lordship of other parts of the universe. Soma was appointed lord over creepers, herbs, stars, nakshatras, planets, grahas, sacrifices, meditation, and over the first of the 4 classes, Brahmanas. Varuna became lord of the oceans, Kubera of all the kings, Vishnu of the Adityas, Agni of Vasus, Daksha of the all Prahalada of Daityas, and Danavas Yama of the Prithris ancestors, Shiva of Yakshas, Rakshasas, and Pisachas, and Himalaya of the mountains. The ocean, Samudra, was made the lord of all rivers. Chitraratha of Gandharvas, Vasuki of Nagas, Takshas of Sarpas, Garuda of birds, the tiger of deer, Airavata of elephants, Chaisharava of horses, the bull of cows, and the Ashwatha tree, a banyan of all trees. Brahma also appointed 4 overlords, Dikpalas, for the 4 directions. To the east there was Sudhanava, to the south Sankadapada, to the west Ketumana, and to the north Hiranya Roma. Prithu was a king who ruled the earth well. During his reign, the earth was laden with food grain. The cows were full of milk and the subjects were happy. To glorify King Prithu, the sages performed a sacrifice, and from this sacrifice there emerged 2 races known as the Sutas and the Magadhas should sing praises in honor of Prithu. But what praise will we sing as the Sutas and the Magadhas? Prithu is still young, he has not done much that can be praised. That may be true, replied the sages, but he will do wondrous deeds in the future. Sing praises of those wonderful deeds, we will tell you about them. Having learnt of these future deeds from the sages, the Sutas and the Magadhas began to compose songs and chant praises in honor of Prithu. These stories were related throughout the earth. Some of the Prithu's subjects heard these stories and came to see Prithu. King, they said, we have heard of your great deeds, but we find it difficult to make a living. Please indicate to us our habitations on earth and tell us where we may be able to get the food we need for subsistence. King Prithu picked up his bow and arrow. He decided to kill the earth since the earth was not yielding food grains to his subjects. The earth adopted the form of a cow and began to flee. But wherever the earth went, Prithu followed with his bow and arrow. He followed the earth to the heaven and to the underworld. Finally, in desperation, the earth started to pray to Prithu. King, she said, please control your anger. I am a woman. Killing me will only mean a sin for you. Besides, what purpose will killing me serve? Your subjects will then be without a place to live in. There must be some other way of ensuring that your subjects can make a living. The earth then herself offered a solution, and King Prithu did her bidding. With his bow, he leveled out the earth. The plains could now be used for villages and cities and for agriculture and animal husbandry. The plains could now be used for villages and cities and for agriculture and animal husbandry. The mountains were gathered together in select places instead of being littered over whole earth. Earlier, Prithu's subjects had lived off fruits and roots. Now Prithu milked the earth in her form of a cow and obtained the seeds of food grains on which people could live. Because of Prithu's deed, the earth came to be known as Prithvi.